Good morning, Kenya. Rise and shine to the morning momentum. Your daily dose of a comprehensive rundown of the top stories making the headlines on the papers. It is the 29th day of April, Tuesday, and this is a daily compendium of local and international news, human interest stories, current affairs, and expert opinion. Use the hashtag The Morning Momentum at Younib Media TV at Alphonce Albakwekwe. Let's take a look at the top stories on the Daily Nation. Short-lived truce is the top story making the headlines here now. Ruto allies accuse Uhuru of hypocrisy and radicalizing the youth against the current regime. Uhuru and Ruto won the presidency in 2013 but fell out after re-election in 2017. So this is the genesis of their fallout. In the run-up to 2022 polls, outgoing President Kenyatta campaigned against his deputy, William Ruto. And then Ruto beat Kenyatta's preferred successor, Raila Odinga, but he has reunited with ODM leader to stabilize his government. President sought a ceasefire with his predecessor last December, but it appears to have come to a cropper. That story is beefed up for you on page 1, page 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. On page 2, State stops a screening of BBC expose on protesters' killings. This emerged as pressure mounted on the government to take action against security officers who unlawfully executed and maimed scores of unarmed protesters during the anti-tax demos in June last year. That story is beefed up for you on page 2. Also on page 10 this morning, why ugali will soon become a costly meal. Now, millers have warned that maize shortage in the North Rift will soon cause the price of flour to rise. As the scramble for the scarce grain intensifies, some millers have been forced to suspend operations and reduce workforce. That story is beefed up for you on page 10. And on the cover page this morning, students caught up in county bursary row. Thousands of learners are caught up in a high-stakes dispute over county bursary schemes. On sports news on page 37, why Star won't hang up his running shoes just yet. Although Kipchoge came in 6th at the London Marathon, the record-smashing legend pocketed more than the winner, thanks to that organizers doled out for the Star's presence. Let's take a look at page 2, up close and candid, with the Nation. State stops screening of BBC expose on protesters' killings. Now, pressure mounts on the government to take action against rogue security officers. Spokesperson says the government pressured them to stop screening the video that implicated security officers. BBC revisits the shootings, and a major case of focus in the expose is the shooting death of Eric Shieni, who was a finance student at the University of Nairobi. BBC analyzed more than 150 images that were taken after and before Shieni was shot, and they were able to identify the soldier who fired at the back of his head. The identity of the officer has yet to be made public, but his images have been widely circulated on social media platforms. According to the expose, the shooter was a member of the armed forces. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 2. On page 3 of this morning, new deadly mosquito species found on Kenya-Tanzania coast. Findings were published last week in Molecular Ecology, a leading global peer-reviewed journal. Scientists say it is highly resistant to insecticides and belongs to the Anopheles gambiae complex. That story is beefed up for you on page 3. On page 4 this morning, Ruto-Uhuru truce collapses as their allies trade barbs. Signs that the political ceasefire would not hold long emerged after two leaders' camps issued differing statements following the meeting in Ichaweri. President Ruto's allies have accused his predecessor of inciting the youth to rise up against the Kenya Kwanza government. Now, the retribution is actions seen as payback. President William Ruto and his predecessor Uhuru Kenyatta, popularly referred to as Uhuruto during their political heydays under the Jubilee administration, had a bitter falling out soon after Mount Kenya had the famous handshake with ODM leader Raila Odinga in 2018. After President Ruto assumed office, Mr. Kenyatta and his mother's security were withdrawn. The families of Northland's farm was also invaded by goons as state security apparatus watched unbothered. Police then raided the home of Mr. Kenyatta's son, Jomo, over illegal possession of guns. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 4 and page 5 of The Nation this morning. On page 6, Gachagua will refund housing levy. Rigathi promises taxpayers that they will claw back the dignity of their payslips once they win in 2027. Ex-deputy president says they will heavily invest in scientific research to arrive at a formula to beat President Ruto. You want to catch up with those insights also on page 6 this morning. Let's delve a little bit into that now. Former DP Rigathi Gachagua has said should the opposition coalition form the next government, they would scrap the housing levy and hand over constructed houses to the counties to rent out and refund Kenyans, accusing the Kenya Kwanza administration of prioritizing personal and commercial interests. Mr. Gachagua said their first assignment would be to restore the dignity of the payslip, referring to abolishing new deductions imposed on salaried workers that have seen incomes shrink. All right, on page 7 this morning, state intend billion fiber optic rollout to boost connectivity. Now, government encouraged to explore use of satellite in remote areas. Senators express concern that many parts of the country, both urban and rural, remain unconnected. In numbers, 100,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable is what the government plans on laying to improve connectivity in the country, and 62% fiber optic cable coverage in the country, according to ICTCS Dr. William Kabogo. That is beefed up for you on page 7. On page 8 this morning, court validates Malala's removal from UDA post. Tribunal had wanted former Kakamega senator reinstated temporarily. Judge also affirms Omar's appointment to take over as the party's Secretary General. That story is beefed up for you on page 8. Also on page 8 this morning, MP Jalango faulted for Kisii witchcraft remarks. Langata MP Felix Odiwuor, aka Jalango, has found himself on the receiving end following his public utterances in Kisii County on Sunday. The first-time lawmaker, among other leaders, had joined Deputy President Kithure Kindiki to raise funds for construction of Marani Catholic Church. He claimed to have traveled to Kisii a day before and spent some time at a local joint within the area. The comedian come politician then claimed that during his short stay at a local joint, a group of men whom he called Council of Witches were conversing about the development area MP Japheth Nyakundi had done. According to Mr. Jalango, the 12 men were bitter that their legislator had connected many of his constituents with electricity, thus making their habit of walking at night difficult as they could easily be seen. All right, that controversy is beefed up for you on page 8. On page 10 this morning, why ugali will soon become costly. Now, Agriculture Ministry set to open imports of 5.5 million bags of yellow maize and release regular stocks. A 90-kilogram bag of maize is going for 4,200 shillings in the local market compared to 4,600 in neighboring Uganda and 5,200 in South Sudan. That story is beefed up for you on page 10. On page 12 this morning, report on religious groups regulation gathering dust. A draft bill on registration and oversight of religious practice in the country remains unpublished. Task force to review laws was formed after the Shakahola killings. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 12 of the Daily Nation this morning. On page 14, EPZ factories are set to be demolished for wildlife corridor. Move expected to ease human-wildlife conflict. PS says the migration corridor project has president's backing. Now, that story is beefed up for you on page 14. At a glance, the conservation area, the Kapiti Plains, are part of the wider Athi Kapiti ecosystem, which is a crucial wildlife dispersal area for Nairobi National Park. The Athi Kapiti ecosystem is home to a range of wild animals, including zebras, giraffes, elands, and wild beasts. Predators such as lions, leopards, cheetahs, and hyenas are also found in the area home. You'll catch up with that on page 14. Let's take a look at page 16. Hope extinguished. He vanished 7 years ago. Now his family have him back dead. Distraught mother says she had always prayed that she would see Odero alive. Police call on public to provide information on prime suspect who remains at large. 7 years ago, Francis Odero dropped out of school and left his family home in Budalangi, Busia County in search for a better life. The class 6 pupil would later find his way to Mwanga in Nakuru County and engaged in jobs at construction sites and tiling land, among others. He later got a security job in a timber yard. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 16. Let's take a look at the expert opinion. Raila must stop doublespeak. Mr. Odinga must accept that he will share the credit for the blame for the Ruto's administration successes or failures. That is the expert opinion on page 19. Also on the expert opinion this morning, new SGR deal as matter inclusive move. Transparency is paramount and the government should immediately publish the full terms of the agreement. That story is beefed up for you on page 18. Now, let's move on and take a look at more stories on the nation this morning. And we move to county news. We start with the Taita Taveta County. Community loses court battle for vast land is what we're going to look at on page 25. But before then, in Nakuru County, MCS vote for free nursery learning to boost outcomes. Devolved unit is training ECDE teachers in competency-based curriculum. County had initiated a feeding program at pre-primary centers to improve child health. Learning in at least 2,400 ECDE centers in Nakuru is set to be free if Governor Susan Kihika implements a motion passed by members of the county assembly. The motion that seeks to make pre-primary education free was sponsored by Shabab MCA David Wathiai and overwhelmingly passed by the assembly last week. The lawmakers wanted to make nursery education accessible for all the learners, and parents have been paying between 2,000 shillings and 3,500 shillings per term. In Mombasa County, Nasir takes on Ruto over road levy funds. Governor Abdul Swamad Nasir has accused the national government of sitting on critical road funds as county infrastructure crumbles under neglect. Mr. Nasir said it was unfair for officials in Nairobi who are unfamiliar with local needs to control billions meant for repairing county roads. His protests come against the backdrop of renewed clash between President William Ruto and governors over the management of the roads maintenance levy fund. Briefly in Nairobi, Buruburu meeting held over drainage feud. Makadara Deputy County Commissioner Philip Koima has clarified that his administrators convened a meeting in Buruburu following a feud between Sagam locals and developer Anthony Mushiri. On more county news, on page 25, community in Taita Taveta loses court fight for land. Court declines to review earlier judgment declaring private farm legal owner. Now, a community in Taita Taveta County has suffered a major setback after a court declined to reverse an earlier ruling and thus restore ownership of prime land over 16,930 acres. Voi Environment and Land Court Judge Edward Waboto ruled that the application to review the court's previous orders did not meet the threshold required to warrant the grant of relief sought. You want to catch up with more insights on page 25. Also on reparations, Talai elders revive push for 20 billion payment of colonial atrocities. The Talai elders have renewed the push for compensation for atrocities committed by the British government against the community during the colonial era. They are seeking over 20 billion as compensation for forceful displacement of families from their ancestral land and confinement of community leaders, among other human rights violations by the colonialists. Now let's shift gears and take a look at the international scene. Now, what is Roman Catholic conclave and who takes part? Following the death of Pope Francis, cardinals are set to pick up his successor. Now, the Roman Catholic cardinals will begin their conclave to elect the Church's 267th pontiff and a successor to Pope Francis on May 7th, the Vatican said. The following are key facts about the conclave, one of the world's oldest and most secretive electoral processes. The World Conclave, from Latin cum clave, with a key, dates back to the protracted election of Celestine IV in 1241, when cardinals were locked up in a crumbling palace. One conclave in the 13th century lasted 2 years, 9 months, and 2 days. So, who takes part? Where does it take place? And how does the ballot work? What does the smoke signify, and how is the new pope announced? All that is beefed up for you on page 26 of the Daily Nation this morning. Briefly, in Washington, D.C., Trump to push for immigration laws compliance. United States President Donald Trump was planning to sign an executive order on Monday directing the Attorney General and Secretary of Homeland Security to identify within a month the cities and states that are not complying with federal immigration laws, a White House official said on Monday. In Moscow, Putin announces 3-day ceasefire next month. Russia President Vladimir Putin yesterday declared a 3-day ceasefire in the war with Ukraine next month to mark the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Soviet Union and its allies in World War II. The Kremlin said the 72-hour ceasefire would run from the start of May 8th to the end of May 10th, and I quote, "All military actions are suspended for this period. Russia believes that the Ukraine side should follow this example," end of quote. Now, there was no immediate response from the Kyiv to the unilateral truce announcement, the second by Putin in quick succession following a 30-hour Easter ceasefire that each side accused the other of violating countless times. That story is beefed up for you on page 26. Let's take a look at business news. Uncollected taxes more than doubled to 2.3 trillion shillings. Up to 392 billion shillings in debt is held up in appeal processes. Amount jumped from 999 billion last year as more taxpayers struggle to cope. So the key figure stands at 2.9 trillion shillings, and that is amount in shillings that the Treasury had set as target this fiscal year for KRA before slashing it by 516 billion shillings. Let's move on and take a look at sports news. Why Kipchoge will still keep running. Appearance fee for a major race like London Marathon heavily outweighs prize money. His status as greatest marathoner of all time earns him as high as 19.5 million shillings in race appearance fee. All right, this is an amazing story. Let's delve into it a little bit. When was the last time you made more than 20 million shillings in a day? That is what Kipchoge made, despite becoming the sixth. Now, appearance fees, not prize money or bonuses, is where the real money lies for elite athletes. Consider the case of Kenyan distance running legend Paul Tergat. The world was abuzz when Tergat, the 5-time World Cross Country Championships winner, who also won the World Half Marathon Championships thrice, announced in 2000 that he would run his maiden 42 kilometers race at the 2001 London Marathon. So you want to catch up with more of those insights on how Kipchoge made more than 20 million shillings by just running in a day. Let's take a look at page 38. Mariga Cup, an opportunity to showcase Kenyan talent. 13 teams from Africa converge on Cairo for biennial tournament. Kenya's Rising Stars will play their first Group B match against Cup favourites Morocco on Thursday in Cairo. This is all about the under-20 AFCON. Let's take a look at the English Premier League. Players who lifted Liverpool to record equaling 20th title. Slot makes mission impossible look like a walk in the park. Salah and Van Dijk lifted Reds to second EPL title on Sunday after taking an assailable 15-point lead with 4 games left. On the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning, needy learners caught up in County Chief's COB feud. Muranga governor wants controller of budget committed to civil jail for contempt. Nyakango in a circular halted issuance of bursaries to learners by devolved units. At a glance, circular restricts bursaries allocation outside jurisdictions of counties, and the original petition had been filed in February by Nakuru-based activists Laban Omusundi and the Katiba Institute, challenging the controller of budget decision to relax a directive preventing counties from offering bursaries to institutions outside their jurisdiction. A court ruling in February suspended a decision to have the controller of budget withdraw the circular restricting allocation of bursaries beyond county jurisdictions. Now, with that story of controller of budget, we come to the tail end of the morning momentum, this 29th day of April 2025. Thank you so much for choosing to stay with the morning momentum and for choosing to watch the best youth television network in East and Central Africa. The program on air has been the morning momentum, and all this has been made possible by the chief controller Peninah Wachera, and behind the lens this morning has been Raphael Wangilla. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful Tuesday. My name is Alphonce. Ouma.
Younib.